are listening to Julia's Trucking Cafe News Hour. Welcome to Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. Man, hasn't it been a couple of really crazy weeks with Christmas and New Year's? I hope y'all have a really good holiday. I've just been trying to stay trucking and also work on these videos for y'all. So thank you so much for joining me again. So let's get right to the news. A storm chaser in Colorado captured this stomach-churning video that's in the bottom of this article of a parked truck that succumbed to the force of high winds. This happened back in November on I-25 in Colorado Springs. This was by a YouTube user storm chasing video. The National Weather Service says that peak winds that day were over 90 miles an hour. To check out this video, come on over to my show notes. That'll be in the description at the bottom of this video. And a truck driver decided he was going to try to outrun a train and end up causing a 15-car derailment. Colorado police say that they suspect that a major train derailment was caused by a truck driver attempting to beat a train across the tracks. This crash happened around 5:30 in the morning back the 1st of December, south of Platteville, Colorado. Authorities say that a Union Pacific train was hauling freight to Salt Lake City when it collided with a truck on County Road 30 and Highway 85. It was a heck of a doggone mess. The crash caused at least 15 rail cars and 2 engines to derail. Some of the derailed rail cars came to a stop in the northbound lanes of Highway 85. The truck driver suffered only minor injuries, and thank goodness no one else was hurt. Platteville Police Chief Carl Dwyer said that their initial investigation indicates, quote, from the article, the semi possibly attempted to beat the train. That crash then was still under investigation. Colorado State Police warned drivers to expect a long closure of all lanes that day on Highway 85. There again, guys, come on. Don't try to beat a train. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And the CVSA says that there's not going to be any soft enforcement for that ELD deadline that happened back December 17th. The CVSA, affectionately known as Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, announced that there will be no grace period for drivers making the transition from the AOBORD to the ELDs. On December 2nd, the CVSA issued a statement that looming ELD compliance deadline warned that the hard enforcement would begin immediately on December 17th. I haven't had a problem as far as getting pulled over for it or anything like that. Most of the time when I go through a scale house, I get the green light. When your weight is right and your dash is clean, I don't get messed with. The CVSA says that as of December 17th, any driver caught without the mandatory ELD, which is electronic logging device for some of those listeners that listen to me that aren't in the trucking community, and the FMCSA is Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They approved the devices will be considered to have no record of duty status, and you'll be put out of service. After the ELD mandate went into effect in December of 2017, they sort of did a soft enforcement, during which drivers were not placed out of service. They were slapped a warning, hey, make sure you have your ELD and this kind of thing. But then the hard enforcement without a service orders began last year in April. So please don't get caught without your ELD in your truck. And motorists are caught on a truck runaway ramp playing in the snow. I'm like, are you kidding me? So after Thanksgiving, the week of November 30th, California police responded to a potentially dangerous situation after a dozen people were spotted playing on a truck runaway ramp. The California Highway Patrol received calls about motorists sledding down the runaway ramp. When officers arrived, they found a dozen passenger vehicles pulled over near the ramp and 12 people playing in the snow. It is unclear whether citations were issued, but California Highway Patrol, of course, everybody takes to Facebook to warn the non-trucking public about the dangers of blocking the runaway ramps. This is another reason why that I do this show, because a lot of my listeners aren't on Facebook. So a lot of you guys don't see any of this. So that's why I hope this is helpful to you to go ahead and learn a lot about this and through this show. So they wrote, I know this picture and several others like this were floating around over the past few days. When a driver has to make the decision to use the runaway ramp, things have gone so wrong, they are now making a decision that will risk their truck and their livelihood, also their own lives, to save the people ahead of them. These ramps are not play zones or rest areas. Please keep them clear and available for their intended use. So that means when drivers' brakes fail, we have to hit that ramp to save lives so we don't mow you over. And in other news, a trucker hit by a semi in a truck stop parking lot ends up passing away. This happened December 4th. A truck driver from West Virginia lost her life when she was struck by a guy that was backing in a truck stop in Virginia. This happened at 7 p.m. around Greensville County, Virginia. According to a report, 55-year-old West Virginia-based trucker Erin Christine Queen stopped at the pilot truck stop off of 95 near Emporia, Virginia. She got out of her truck and she was walking toward the store when she stopped near the front of her truck. It was then that she was struck by another semi-truck that was backing up near the fuel islands. Was he using his flashers? I don't know. Another driver reportedly alerted the driver that was backing up that he hit somebody, and he pulled ahead and ran over her a second time. Queen was taken to the hospital where she later passed away from her injuries. No charges as of yet were filed. Police do not suspect that alcohol was a factor in the fatal incident. So even though she was standing in front of her truck or maybe next to it, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just speculating here. This is strictly my personal opinion that anything could have happened in that scenario. And a former way station trooper is charged with bribery. A former veteran trooper with the Tennessee Highway Patrol has been indicted on felony charges related to bribery and conspiracy. Back in November 18th, 48-year-old trooper Ray Lee Stubblefield Jr. was indicted by a grand jury in Greene County on 3 counts of conspiracy to bribe a public servant and 3 counts of bribing a public servant. The charges relate to alleged conspiracy that took place between January of 2015 and December 31st, 2017, while Stubblefield manned a way station on I-81 in Greene County. Oh, I know that way station all too well. According to court documents, Stubblefield accepted bribes from Billy Wayne Wise, Jerry L. Messinger, and Anthony Joe Zrodek. I might be pronouncing that wrong, the third, quote, in exchange for commercial truck and or trailer repair business referrals. The local TV station reports that Stubblefield was fired from the Tennessee Highway Patrol in September after 21 years on the force. Stubblefield is scheduled to appear back in court for his arraignment this month, January 10th. So if I hear anything, I'll definitely keep you posted. the Tennessee Highway Patrol, the FBI, and the Tennessee Department of Safety all were in on this investigation. Now, what it said as far as exchange of commercial truck or trailer repair business referrals, let me explain. There again, for the listeners that aren't in the trucking industry, and thank you so much for tuning in. What happens is when you have a bad tire that is showing steel belts or low, or you need lights are out or anything like that, they will put you out of service. So what these repair places would do is come in and bribe the Stubblefield to say, hey, if you have any guys that are put out of service, contact us, give us a call, and we'll come over and repair it, and we'll give you a kickback from the repair bill. Something to that effect. There again, it's my speculation. So when they needed repairs, those were the only ones that Stubblefield used, I guess, according to this indictment. So instead of using anybody that's in the area, and he was probably getting kickbacks for it, just to explain that story a little bit. And you'll love this next story. A 95-year-old lady gets her wish to ride in a big truck. An Alabama trucking company made something amazing happen for a woman in their community during Christmas. B.R. Williams Trucking went above and beyond to help 95-year-old Helen Haywood to fulfill her wish to ride in a semi-truck. As you see here in the picture, that's her standing next to the truck, and they went above and beyond to get her into the truck by using a forklift with kind of like a man crate around it. The company explains how they met Haywood and worked with her to grant her wish, again on Facebook. So, this is what the company wrote per the article. Helen Haywood loves big trucks and has always wanted to ride in one, but she never knew anyone in the business to make this happen. One of her family members noticed B.R. Williams at a business expo and asked if they would consider the favor of surprising the grandmother and the mother with a truck ride. We not only said yes, said B.R. Williams, but we said that we would stop what we were doing at any time of the day to make this happen for her. This experience is one that we will never forget, and it's things like this that we love doing. The opportunity to serve others is why we are in business, but really it's Helen who served us. She gave us a reminder of how proud we need to be in what we do and the industry we serve. As we enter, this happened before Thanksgiving, so as they entered into the Thanksgiving season, they want to remember Helen's sweet smile and how grateful she was for this short truck ride. We will remember that it only takes a few moments to stop what you're doing to make somebody's day. As we receive many thanks from her family for the surprise, we thank Helen and her family for the honor of meeting her and how she absolutely made our day. This episode of Julia's Truck and Cafe is sponsored by My Patriot Supply. As truck drivers, we all know what it's like to get stranded at a grocery food warehouse or a paper mill with nothing to eat, and you're waiting hours on end to get loaded. Am I right? Well, I have the answer. My Patriot Supply. There's also stories coming up in the next video where truckers were stranded, but I'll talk about that here in a little bit. My Patriot Supply is good for 25 years. It comes in a slim-line plastic tote. As you see here, this is a cool-looking ammo can. And look at all the food you get. And guess how much it is? Only $39 for all of that food. It's a week's worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners that you can have stored underneath your truck. Doesn't take up a lot of room. And when you're waiting to get loaded or unloaded or bad weather, you'll have your food right there in your side box. Definitely have some for the bad weather if you live any place in the country in your food pantry. I could speak from experience. When I went through Hurricane Katrina with my mother, son, and I, 4 60-foot pine trees broke in half and landlocked me in that I couldn't get out for food. I wish what I knew then, what I know now about my Patriot Supply, I would have made doggone sure that I had some of that in my food pantry. You can get this great looking ammo can and a week's supply worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners for just $39, like I mentioned, by going to my website at juliastruckingcafe.com. Click on the emergency food supply tab, scroll down, click on the image, and it'll give you more information on how you can order yours today. So stay prepared. Winter weather is upon us. January and February is usually really bad. What happens if the truck stop is snowed in? There's no power, or you're stuck in the middle of the interstate. What are you going to do for food? Get My Patriot Supply today. You'll be glad that you did. And let's get back to the news. A transport company in Canada that was featured on the favorite hit TV show on Weather Channel, Ice Road Truckers, I believe, don't quote me on that, is now shut down. It lost over $18 million in the past 2 years. The TLI Cho Landtran, along with Ventures West Transport and affiliates, are closing down, according to reports from the Canadian Broadcasting Company. According to their report, between 38 of 43 workers have already been laid off, with 5 remaining on to assist with the wind-down process. The company issued a statement the last of November. From the article, the transport companies have been experiencing significant losses for several years and were reliant on a small number of contracts, many of which were unprofitable. The transport companies recently bid for a major contract, and that was unsuccessful. Without this business, they could not continue to operate without sustaining significant losses. Unfortunately, the decision was made to close transport companies' operations and sell their assets, consisting mainly of trucks and trailers. We want to thank all of the employees and suppliers of transport companies for all of your past support. The companies hauled materials to the diamond mines via the ice road for 10 years. 2 of the companies reportedly lost $18.6 million in the past 2 years. And as of October, the company's debts approximated $60 million. The company has around $40 million in assets, so that means there's still going to be $20 million in the hole. Parent company TLI Cho Investment Corporation is owned and operated by TLI Cho government. I'm just saying TLI Cho Investment Corporation. I do not know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably really butchering it. Sorry. TLI Cho entities have provided tens of millions of dollars worth of loans to prop up the struggling trucking companies for the past few years. They hope to be granted creditor protection in February, giving them time to sell off the company assets. The investment corporation has reportedly left around 140 creditors unpaid, leaving many smaller Canadian trucking companies struggling to pay their drivers. And as we all know, feds slap a trucking company bosses, got an itch, with fraud and lying to the federal government. And this is regarding Celadon. So as we all know, on December 5th, DOJ Department of Justice announced that Indiana residents William Eric Meek, 39, and Bobby Lee Peevler, 40, were charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, bank fraud, securities fraud, 5 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of securities fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to make false statements to public companies' accountants, and to falsify books, records and accounts of a public company, and 1 count of making false statements to a public company's accountants, period. Peevler was additionally charged with 2 counts of making false statements to a public company's accountants. The DOJ describes the scheme in the following statement in this article. In 2016, Meek and Peevler and others at Celadon knew the value of a substantial portion of Celadon's trucks, that they declined in value in a part of a slowdown in the trucking company market. So many of those trucks were owned by quality companies. Now, I tried to buy one of those trucks, and they were junk. Trust me. One of Celadon's divisions and serious mechanical issues made it unattractive to drivers. Further depressing their value. In other words, further lowering their value. Instead of accounting for this decline in truck value, Meek and Peevler and others allegedly devised a scheme that caused Celadon to conceal or hide tens of millions of dollars in losses to its shareholders, banks, and the investing public. Their scheme involved Quality trading away hundreds of older trucks and unused trucks to a large truck dealer in exchange for getting new trucks. During those trades, they initially inflated the prices on invoices associated with those trades. So Celadon's books wouldn't reflect the fact that Celadon's trucks were worth significantly less than they told investors. The indictment says. Although they were actually trades, Meek and Peevler and others allegedly sought to portray the transactions as independent purchases and sales of trucks in order to avoid the heightened scrutiny. Meek and Peevler also alleged structurally one of the trades in an effort to artificially improve one of Celadon's quarterly financial statements. Quality received approximately $25 million from the truck dealer just before the end of Celadon's fiscal quarter. Celadon used to pay down its debts and appear to be in compliance with certain lending agreements. Meek and Peevler and others allegedly failed to disclose or tell anybody. However, as a part of that deal of Celadon getting that $25 million, Quality had agreed to pay the same amount back to the truck dealer 3 days after the quarter ended. Celadon's quarterly financial statements made no mention of the secret agreement. So the indictment says. Then in late 2016 and early 2017, Celadon's independent auditors began looking through the books. They began asking questions about these truck trade-ins that Meek, Peevler, and others had used to hide to drop the truck values. In response, Meek, Peevler, and others allegedly made false and misleading statements about denying there were trades and concealing the terms of these trades, including Quality's agreement to pay money back to the truck dealer shortly after the quarter ended. So in other words, they were hiding all those transactions. Peevler also directed a senior executive and co-conspirator to delete certain emails after the auditor had made a request for relevant documents. Honey, nothing is deleted on a computer. Now, in May 2017, Celadon announced that its financial statements issued for fiscal year 2016, which ends June 30th, as well as quarters ending in September and December of 2016, could no longer be relied on. Could not be related reports of the independent auditor for those 3 time periods. Following this announcement, Celadon's share of stocks dropped significantly, causing a 1-day loss in Celadon's market value at approximately $62.3 million in stock trading. Now, both Meek and Peevler were arrested back in November, and earlier this year, Celadon agreed to pay $42.2 million in restitution to the shareholders for filing materially false and misleading statements to investors and falsifying the books, cooking the books, and records and accounts. Former president of Celadon subsidiary Quality Companies, a company that leased trucks to owner-operators, Danny Williams, pled guilty in April of 2019 to charges of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, make false statements to a public company's accountants, falsify or cook the books, records, and accounts of a public company. Ooh, those guys are in a lot of hot water, ain't they? One second. and the trucking industry reacts to Celadon's bankruptcy news. Oh, excuse me. So as it was previously reported on, and if you listen to the podcast, Celadon Group they did file for bankruptcy, and they left 4,000 drivers without work, and shut down the fuel cards and did not give them any notice whatsoever. So everybody was scrambling to find a new job. Also, from what I understand from the Indianapolis local news, that at that time there was Indianapolis City Police surrounding the headquarters, which is Indianapolis, so that nobody would go postal when they came in to turn their trucks in. And a man is sentenced for exchanging bribes for CDLs for unqualified drivers. Now get a load of this. California trucking school owner was sentenced to prison for a scheme involving bribing Department of Motor Vehicles employees in exchange for commercial driver's licenses for his students. Back on December 5th, 61-year-old Paul Singhi was sentenced to 3 years in prison, according to a news release by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of California. Earlier in 2019, he pled guilty to charges including conspiracy to commit bribery, commit identity fraud, and to commit unauthorized use of a computer, and for identification document fraud. Oh, he's in a whole boatload of trouble. He owned the Calcutta Truck School in North Hollywood, California. The charges stem from a bribery scheme involving him and 2 California Department of Motor Vehicle workers that allegedly took place from September 2014 to June of 2017. According to court documents, he bribed 2 DMV employees, both of whom pled guilty, and they were sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison, and the other was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in prison for being in part accessing and altering records in the DMV of California's database. Records were altered to show that the applicants for CDLs had passed the required tests when in truth they didn't even take them, and they haven't passed them. This caused the DMV to issue permits and completed CDLs despite the applicants not even taking or passing those tests. This is the kind of drivers we have on the road, people. Charges related to the scheme are also pending against the co-defendants and the driving school owner and broker, Shauna Denise Harrison. She's not it, but she's another one, a DMV employee at Rancho Cucamonga DMV office, the police say. And look who's back in the news. Yep, Casper the Camel is back in the news. Casper the Camel is making his debut, and the billboard's kind of stretched to fit the screen. The Louisiana truck stop is making most of their viral fame by erecting a new tongue-in-cheek billboard to entice travelers in for a bite. Back in September, like I told you, a lady found herself, she snuck into the Camel to retrieve her runaway dog and found herself being sat on by the Camel. So she responded by biting him in the balls to free herself. So it made international headlines. So now the owners have put up billboards saying, "Stop in for gas and a bite. Next exit," and Casper the Camel is on the billboards. Now there's only 2 billboards up, but he says there are plans in the works for a whole bunch more. And troopers seized 5 trucks after they say the company failed to pay tolls. In Maine, police state that they seized multiple trucks from a trucking company after it allegedly failed to pay tolls in the Maine Turnpike Authority for 3 years. Back in December, Maine State Police seized a quarter of the trucks in the fleet, Rhode Island-based company Commodity Haulers Express, because they say that the company owes the state over $75,000 in unpaid tolls. Why did they let it get so far? From the press release, state police seized 5 trucks, trailers today, all owned by this Commodity Haulers Express, which owes $75,000 in unpaid tolls to the Maine Turnpike Authority. State Police Commercial Vehicle Unit impounded the 5 tractor trailers owned and operated by Commodity Haulers Express of Rhode Island. The trucking company is facing felony theft of service charges, after racking up approximately $75,000 in unpaid debt over the past 3 years. Back in November, they were investigating a toll evasion case by the Maine Turnpike Authority. The Turnpike Authority reported that Commodity Haulers Express, which employs a fleet of approximately 20 trucks, had amassed an unpaid toll fare bill of approximately, again, $75,000. The company had been notified of the unpaid bill multiple times. Their right to operate their vehicles in Maine had been suspended. So this Corporal Rogers conducted surveillance and created a timeline of when the offended trucks were entering and leaving Maine. The troopers located the 5 of the offended trucks. One was stopped southbound in York along the Maine Turnpike, and 4 others were stopped along Route 122 in Poland, Maine. Trucking company hauls Poland spring water. The water company was not aware or involved in any of this scheme. The tolls owned from the 5 trucks seized were about $42,000. That, like I said, over a 3-year period. And in Iowa pileup, more than 50 vehicles back in the 9th of December. Authorities in Iowa say that dozens of vehicles were involved in a pileup on Interstate 80 at mile marker 139 near Altoona, Iowa. Troopers say that at least 50 vehicles collided during winter weather conditions that day. In images captured at the scene, you could see that a lot of the vehicles, or a bunch of them, were semi-trucks. Initial reports indicated that 1 person was killed, but then the police turned around and revised that statement, was seriously injured. It isn't clear how many others were hurt. And Iowa 80 westbound remained closed for a bunch of hours. And police arrest a truck driver over a flyer inviting kids on a ride-along. Federal authorities arrested a truck driver over a flyer that he's accused of posting in Texas. He's unidentified. He was reportedly taken into custody at the beginning of December. The arrest came following an investigation into a flyer posted in the El Paso area that invited children to ride along with the driver and even offered to pay them for riding along. The flyer reads as follows: Parents and boys, if your kids want something to do at school breaks, I'm a truck driver. If your kids want to see different places, I'm willing to let them go with me. My trucks have GPS tracking so you know where we are at all times. I pay them $100 a week. It teaches them a responsibility. The kids will be well guarded. This keeps me from being bored. If interested, call. The charges that the truck driver might face weren't disclosed at that time. I would think child endangerment or even child trafficking, for Pete's sake, So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I greatly, greatly appreciate all of you who tune in to me each and every week. There again, I'm stumbling through it. So please, as I do this more and more often, hopefully I'll get more comfortable and doing a better job with transitioning in between the articles and such. I do this all by myself. So I'm having a transition. I'm running, if you want to be a sponsor to the show, you enjoy my work, to try to help me offset the costs of doing this video and doing the podcast each and every week, you could become a sponsor. The links to do so are down in the description. You could also go to my website at juliastruckitcafe.com. Go to the cafe menu, scroll down for the shows, click on the shows tab, and there's links to how you can donate. Or once you donate any amount over $5 monthly, you will get a sneak peek behind the scenes of how I do the videos, how I do the podcast. And also, you will be invited to my Discord group, which is a private chat group. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for your patience. I hope everybody had a great holiday. Phew! Boy, what a last couple of weeks. So take care, and you all be safe out there.